So I'm going to show how to fix a few common mistakes in Brioche Stitch. I'm doing a 2-color brioche here, and let's pretend that either my stitch falls off the needle accidentally, or maybe I notice I made a mistake farther down and I need to drop it off on purpose. So I'm going to push that off. I always, when I drop a stitch, like to push the needles through a bit just so that they aren't in danger. And I'm going to wiggle this down a little bit. And if you're trying this as a sample, I suggest to drop it down till you get that feeling where you're worried about it, and then you're going to come out the other side, try it again, you'll be less worried. By the third time it won't be such a big deal. So at the bottom here I have a little loop in the air, so I'm going to catch that loop on my hook. I like to use a crochet hook that's about the same size as my knitting needle but doesn't need to be exact. Then I've got all of these little strands here. So what I need to do here is dip my hook. I'm going to skip this first light color strand because that's the one that is naturally supposed to be over here. I'm going to dip underneath the next dark color strand. I'm actually going to go under 2 of them, 2 light color, catch the next dark color and bring it through everything. And there's my next stitch. Then again, I'm going to skip this top light color strand because that's the one that should be sitting over the stitch that's on my hook. I'm going to go underneath 2 light color strands, get the next dark color one, and if they're a little jumbled, just kind of straighten them out and look at the sides. So under 2 light, catch the next dark, pull that through, skip the lowest light strand, that one wants to stay here, go under the next one, and the next light color after that, grab the dark one, pull it through, and then when you're putting it on your needle, since I want to have this ending up ready to do a brioche knit, I am going to catch this top light color strand as well. And those 2 are going to go onto my needle. So in here, this looks familiar. I'm ready to do my brioche knit, and yarn forward, slip one with a yarn over, brioche knit, and so on. So I'm going to do that again because it tends to be a little confusing for people. And actually, let's do it on the other side. So let's say this stitch had a problem. Rather than trying to fix it in the brioche purl column, I would turn it over, and we're going to fix it on the brioche knit, and it might be a little easier to see. So I'm going to push this off my needle, make sure nothing else is in danger, wiggle till it hurts a little bit, let yourself be a little scared, catch the loop at the bottom. Now, if you drop the stitch because you shouldn't be knitting, like let's say it's late, you're tired, you have a second glass of wine, just put it aside with a crochet hook or a stitch mark or a safety pin or whatever you got in there. It'll be fine to wait till morning. When you're ready though, you've got your loop on your hook. The lowest, in this case dark color strand, I'm going to leave here. I'm going to dip under the next 2 dark color strands, also dip under the closest light color strand, which I'm going to grab and pull through all of that. And again, lowest dark I'm going to leave. Next dark color strand, I'm going to go under that, plus the following one and the next light color strand, and that's what's going to get pulled through. Under the dark color strand here, and I don't have quite as far to go because I'm on the other side, just a little different here, and I'm going to grab this guy, and actually, you know what, here's my dark color strand. I didn't see the second one because I'd held the yarn on the other side, but we should still end up with 2 darks and a light as I pull it through. There we go, and then this very top one is what I'm going to want to put on my needle. This is going to look a little different because remember I turned it. I want to put this on the left-hand needle now rather than the right because we're looking at this from the wrong side. And then when I flip it back over to the other side, it's going to make a bit more sense. And then here I am ready to go. Yarn to the front, slip it, and then my brioche knit, something fell off here, so this is another common mistake that sometimes the yarn over will slide off the needle. So this looks funny because it's a single strand, and normally it should be the dark strand crossed by the light. My light strand's just hanging out here, and that's because I was fussing with fixing a mistake. So I'm just going to pick it up, swing my needle away from me to pick it up. That looks pretty normal, ready to go. Yarn to the front, slip one yarn over, brioche knit. Now, the other thing that's common that people need to do is to tink or unknit, undoing this row 1 stitch at a time. So here I am, I just did a brioche knit, and it's helpful if you know what just happened, so it's easier to take it out. And I'm going to keep it facing this direction. I'm going to take my left needle and I'm going to go into this dark V, heading away from me. And what I end up catching is one of each color of my yarn, which makes sense because I'm undoing a brioche knit which went into both strands. Then I slide it off my right needle, gently pull. Now the slip stitch I'm just going to transfer over And the yarn over part is probably just going to fall right off because it's not terribly structured anyway. And then we repeat. Undoing the brioche knit, I'm going to go away from me, catching both strands, undo it from my needle, and then I'm going to unslip or slip this back. And the yarn over just kind of slithers off on its own. So undo my brioche knit, undo my slip stitch, the yarn over kind of undoes itself, but be careful it doesn't get tangled around in a funny way. And you're just going to go nice and slow like that to be undoing things as needed. Now, sometimes you have to undo a whole chunk of fabric. I'm not going to take everything off my needle here, but I'll do a little section. So sometimes, by design or on accident, a whole bunch of stitches fall off. And brioche is interesting because it's almost got these two layers. You can see the dark color bumps are falling towards me and the light color bumps are falling away from me. So I want to just stay calm and pick them up as I go. It can be a little hard to pick up the loops in the air, so I like to tink as I undo this last row. So here I'm not going to catch this loop, I'm going to catch the two strands, dark and light, that were brioche knitted before. Now the slip stitch and the yarn over kind of undo themselves, so I'm just going to catch this loop. There we go. Then I'm going to undo my brioche knit. I'm going to undo my slip stitch. See, it's hiding back here. And it's kind of starting to sink in, so just be really gentle, try not to pull too much. And just tease it out. My yarn's split a bit, so I'm just going to take another second to catch all the plies. Undo my brioche knit. The yarn over undoes itself, and then this plain stitch is going to be right here to grab. Undo my brioche knit, catch that, undo my brioche knit here, and then I am back in business, ready to go. The main thing to remember is don't panic. And if you made a mistake because you oughtn't to be knitting right now, or you oughtn't to be knitting brioche stitch right now, make sure it's safe, put something in any dangling loops, put it aside, and pick it up again the next day or whenever you can pay a bit more attention. But again, if you have the basics of knitting brioche, and you have the basics of fixing mistakes in simpler stitches like stockinette, fixing mistakes in brioche isn't too tricky, and you can always test it on a sample swatch just to kind of learn the basics with lower stakes when you aren't risking a big project.